You ever been on a software project that starts with this amazing, noble goal, to make it super flexible, super adaptable, but then it just morphs into this slow, fragile, and crazy expensive nightmare? Well, today we're going to unpack a really powerful metaphor that shows exactly how that happens. It's called the configuration complexity clock.
Look, it always starts from a good place, right? Every leader, every business wants a system that can pivot with the market in real time. The dream is to make small changes without having to call in the cavalry of expensive developers for every little thing. It's all about agility, control, and of course, efficiency.
But here's the twist. What if that very dream, that pursuit of flexibility, is actually a trap? It's a path that can take a clean, elegant application and turn it into this tangled, brittle mess that's just a complete nightmare to operate.
It's a classic slippery slope. It begins with one simple, totally innocent idea. Hey, let's just move this one little setting out of the code so we don't have to do a full redeployment. But that single step can be the start of a journey that leads from well-structured code to this hidden, messy system where agility goes to die.
So to really get our heads around this, software architect Mike Hadlow came up with this brilliant metaphor, the configuration complexity clock. It's this perfect model that shows us, step by step, how all those good intentions can pave a road straight into an operational disaster.
So let's do it. Let's take a journey around this clock. We're going to follow an application from its nice, simple beginnings all the way to a point of, frankly, unbearable complexity. And we'll see exactly where things start to go off the rails.
Okay, so the clock shows the whole life cycle. We start at 12 o'clock, the honeymoon phase. Everything's hard-coded, it's simple. Then we get to about 2 o'clock, which is the sweet spot. This is where you move simple things like API keys to a config file. Perfect. But then the slide begins. By 6 o'clock, you're building whole GUIs for non-engineers to make changes. And by 9 o'clock, you've hit the nightmare zone. Your configuration file has secretly become a fragile, custom-built programming language, often hidden inside something called a rules engine. The pain just gets worse and worse until finally, the only way out is to scrap the whole thing and go right back to 12 o'clock.
And that 9 o'clock mark, that is the absolute tipping point. This is the moment your config stops being simple data and becomes actual executable logic. Your configuration file is now a program, but it's a program with none of the safety nets of a real one. No debugger, no decent testing tools, and forget about documentation.
And what's happened here is a classic software trap called the inner platform effect. In trying to be flexible, the team has accidentally signed up for a massive new job, designing, building, and maintaining their very own programming language. And it's almost always a slow, buggy, and poorly designed version of the very tools they were already using.
Okay, so let's shift gears from the technical side of things and talk about how this problem snowballs into a major business liability. Because believe me, the trip around this clock has a very real and very high price tag.
This is Technical Debt 101. That easy, flexible choice you made way back when, it's now creating this massive, compounding cost down the line. When you only focus on the upfront convenience of avoiding a code change, you're making a dangerously flawed calculation of the real total cost of ownership.
And get this slide really quantifies the pain. Studies have shown these kinds of complex systems can demand 250 to 500% more maintenance time. I mean, think about that. Developer time is one of your most valuable assets, and it's being burned just fighting complexity instead of building cool new features that actually make money.
And you start paying the interest on that debt in very real ways. Your development cycle slows to a crawl. More bugs start slipping into production. The risk of a major outage goes through the roof. And maybe worst of all, your best engineers get demoralized because they're spending all day untangling a mess instead of solving interesting problems.
But it's not all doom and gloom. There's really good news here. The clock was first described way back in 2012. And since then, modern DevOps practices have completely changed the game. They've broken the very assumptions that got the clock ticking in the first place.
You see, the old premise that drove everyone around the clock was fear. The fear that deploying new code was this big, scary, expensive event. But with modern CI/CD pipelines, that whole idea has been flipped on its head. For a high-performing team today, deploying a code change is trivial, it's safe, and it can happen in minutes.
This is a massive shift in thinking. Practices like infrastructure as code and GitOps mean you treat everything as code. Application settings, server configurations, all of it lives in a version-controlled repository.
It gets the same code review, the same automated testing, and the same deployment pipeline as your app logic. That dangerous artificial line between code and config just gets erased.
All right, so this brings us to the most important part. How do we apply this framework to our own systems so we don't fall into the same trap? So before you even think about moving logic into a config file, use a simple framework like this one. Ask your team, how often is this really going to change? Who's going to be changing it? How much expertise does it take to change it? And crucially, what's the blast radius if we mess it up? Just running through these questions can guide you to make the right architectural choice for the right reasons. So here's your action plan. 1. Be brutally honest with yourself. Audit your key systems and figure out where they are on the clock. 2. Do the math. Actually calculate the total cost of ownership of all that flexibility. And 3. Invest in your deployment pipeline. Making deployments cheap, fast, and safe is the single best antidote to the configuration complexity clock. You know, the clock is a really powerful cautionary tale. And understanding where you are on its journey is the very first step toward building software that's not just flexible, but truly agile. So that just leaves one question. What time is it on your company's clock?